And you're talking about Republicans rebranding themselves after their big defeat in 2012. It doesn't seem as if these guys got the memo. With me right now to discuss it, Robert Costa, Washington editor for the National Review, and Sam Stein, who's a political editor for the Huffington Post. Robert, how would you rate those performances?
I think these are Republicans asking tough questions at a congressional hearing. This is not a big story. These are congressional hearings, not a cocktail party. They should be tough questions. I don't understand the outrage about questions for someone who's going to be running the Pentagon.
Sam?
Well, I slightly disagree with Robert. You know, actually, it's funny because some of these questions did produce interesting illustrative answers. For instance, when Ron Johnson got Hillary Clinton to say, what difference does it make about the attack in Benghazi? What does make a difference? The problem I found with these questions was that they ended up stepping on the news. They became so demonstrative, they became so theatrical with how they were asking these questions to the people at the hearings that they ended up stealing the spotlight from the answers themselves. And I thought that did sort of a disservice in some respects to the questioning.
But is the real story here the theater of the questions, or is it Hagel's fumbling performance? I think it's the latter. I think Hagel had just a dismal performance at that hearing. Did he seem competent to run the Pentagon? There were a lot of questions even among Democrats after that hearing, whether he's ready.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I think Hagel had a really poor performance. And I think what I'm saying is that for these senators, if you looked at what Ted Cruz was asking about, association with an Israeli diplomat that basically 99.9% of the country's never heard of, what was the point of that? He ended up actually stepping on Hagel's bad day by taking some of the spotlight away from him.
Let's go after some of the questioning, because I disagree with you and I agree with you. I'm stronger than you on this one.
Not surprised about that.
What?
So I'm not surprised you agree.
Oh, is that sarcasm? Okay, let's talk about Lindsey Graham. When you ask a guy who's your tester who had already recanted his argument about the power of the Israeli lobby, obviously it's an enormously influential lobby, like the NRA or any lobby, heavily funded, heavily activated, a lot of strong people with strong minds. Everyone knows they're influential. That's why they're there. That's why AIPAC is there, to be influential. To say which senator do you know that was bought by them, controlled by them, intimidated by them, obviously there's no answer to that question. So what was the purpose of that exchange? What I would submit here is that it wasn't an interview. It wasn't even an interrogation. It was almost like a Star Chamber attempt to try to incriminate the guy. In other words, there is no right answer to that question. Had he named a name of somebody who come up to him and said, you know, I was going to vote for that thing, I chose the other way because what's his name got to me and said I better not. If somebody had said that to him and he had given the name, he'd have been dead in these hearings. So I'm just saying what the questions were along the lines of, have you stopped beating your wife? There was no informative answer. They were not inquisitive.
You're calling this a McCarthy hearing, a Star Chamber. But let me ask you a question. You think when Democratic senators met with Hagel behind the scenes, they weren't asking about his comments about the lobby?
By the way, they got the answers. They got the answers, but I believe what happened is this guy was walked on the plank. He was told by McCain and Lindsey, we're satisfied with your answers, and that's all the words that come out of the preliminary discussions. They got him in, they jumped him.
Ironically,
for theatrical purposes.
Ironically, if he had been given truth serum, Chuck Hagel could have pointed to himself as someone who had been influenced by the Israeli lobby, because a lot of his previous statements he had to walk back. He had said, this wasn't, I didn't mean what I said, and that was, in effect, a direct influence of the Israeli lobby. He could have said, you're looking at him.
But you're saying this is just theater to ask about the Jewish lobby comment. I think it was the right course of action if a senator in a congressional hearing for someone who's going to be running the Defense Department, if they've made that kind of comment in a public
forum. We're a month into this discussion, though. The trouble is, Robert, we're a month into this discussion with back and forths and recantations and taking backs and explaining what's going on now for weeks now, and then to go in there and act like none of that has ever happened.
You're talking about happened in the press and it happened before the official hearing. This is the official hearing to confirm it for the Pentagon.
Okay, I will stick to what I'm saying. If they were interested in his defense policy, would have asked about it.
I want to make one point. The number of times that Israel came up, I think, in words was about 160 plus. The number of times that they talked about Afghanistan was well into the dozens. It was so much smaller. If you look at the weight of each issue facing the next defense secretary, you would admit that Afghanistan.
But Hagel brought a lot of this on himself by talking about the Jewish lobby.
The point is this. If you go through this hearing and they ask that question about an old statement once, fine. Twice, okay. 3 times. But it became so repetitive that it looked like a lot of these Republican senators were there to score a political point. And maybe that's what they wanted to do. Maybe they wanted to get a clip on TV.
But this is a classic discussion.
But it didn't really.
Hard on
what was the point of Senator Rand Paul saying in the tape we just showed that Hillary was basically being run out of the State Department because of what happened in Benghazi.
What's wrong with asking tough questions about Benghazi?
No, it was an assertion. It wasn't a question. He said she'd been run out. She's quitting because of this.
Well, doesn't he have a right as a U.S. Senator to make an assertion about Benghazi, about her handling?
Is it a dishonest statement that she's leaving the office of Secretary of State?
That's your opinion, but he's allowed to have an opinion as well.
That's an opinion? No, it's not a dishonest statement.
No, that's your opinion. He's making a statement about Benghazi.
Is there any possibility that Hillary Clinton is leaving the State Department because of what happened in Benghazi? Any possibility of that?
I don't think so.
Well, then why are you saying that's within his right to say so? It's a dishonest statement.
He thinks so.
How do you know he thinks so? How do you know he's just not trying to destroy a reputation? That's what I think he was trying to do.
Well, he looks at the disaster that was how the State Department handled Libya.
And he's saying Hillary Clinton has a statement.
Well, no one knows Hillary's total motivation for the party.
Let me just say this.
I don't want to get into
Anybody who wants to watch the tape, we'll show it again and again. He basically said Hillary Clinton is leaving the State Department because of what happened in Benghazi. A totally dishonest, scurrilous statement about somebody who served the country for many years. It was an awful thing to do, a cheap shot by not much of a person. And that's a problem, and that is vindictive politics. It's not the role of the Senate to play that part. It was the role.
It is the role of the Senate to ask Hillary Clinton tough questions about what happened in Libya.
There wasn't a tough question. Why do you keep going back robotically to this tough question?
I'm not going back
robotically. It wasn't a question.
I'm saying you're pinpointing Rand Paul's comment.
Because it was the most egregious example of what I'm talking about here. The Mad Dog attack on Hillary Clinton, the Mad Dog attack on Chuck Hagel is extraordinary in Senate history. I have never seen people come on Senate hearings and say yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. You don't talk to fellow senators
McCain used to do the same thing to Rumsfeld when Rumsfeld was testifying about Iraq. Your point being? I'm saying McCain is always combative in these kind of hearings. To say it's just a partisan thing happening right now.
No, it wasn't partisan. It was personal, and it was strange. And I'll go into it later in the show. Anyway, thank you, Robert Costa, for defending the indefensible.
Oh, that's...
It's true. Sam Stein, thank you. This is Hardball, the place for politics.